Hello and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Welcome once again to NAC TV, and thank you as always for taking a little bit of your time and spending it right here with us. I'm Eoin Devereux, news and sports reporter with the Banner Press, joined this week by owner, operator, publisher, and hat connoisseur Ken Waddell. Ken, good to have you in this week.
A lot of stories behind the hat, but I won't bore you with them today.
We'll see about that. There's still time.
Yeah.
All right, they're going to get right into it because we got a huge 24-page paper this week and so much news to cover within it. And as always, it's always a good place to start at the start. And that we have to do right at the front page. Some great pictures. One of my co-workers here, Katie, was able to get a few great pictures of the weekend storm. She's out in the country there, a little bit outside of Neepawa, and has a little bit of a ranch, a couple horses set up there. So if you look on page 1 and page 2, you're going to be able to see those great pictures. I saw them and I thought they told a very good visual representation of the weekend and the storm that rolled in. That's sort of why I was sort of pushing Ken to sort of get them in there this week.
Yeah, they're kind of cute. Of course, all horses have names that especially they're affectionately held by Kay. So we have Bo and Luke. Bo and Luke. Well, Bo and Luke treated the storm a lot like the rest of us did. We were told it was coming Friday. It didn't come Friday. They didn't come in. They were told it's coming Saturday. They didn't believe it. They didn't come in. So Kay got the blankets on them because they're older horses.
Yeah.
And they're spoiled. But she admits that. And so they stood out there, and when the storm finally hit, they stood out there for a while, as this picture shows, but then they decided that the barn was a lot better place to be, like the rest of us. The storm's not coming. No, it's not very bad yet. Oh, it is kind of getting bad. I guess we better stay inside. So they just copied what we all did.
No, but it was great to be able to get those pictures. We always want to have a front page that is visually interesting, that's going to be a little grabby when you see it for the first time. Now, whether it's something from a visual aspect, an interesting picture, or whether it's a news portion of it, a very important news story locally, we want to sort of get you on that first page and bring you in. So hopefully that does do it. And hopefully you will be able to pick up a physical copy of the Banner Press anywhere in Neepawa or surrounding communities. If you're not able to, as we say, as always, you can find it on mywestman.ca, the digital copy. It's not quite as fun as flipping through and getting a little ink on your fingers and all that, but it'll work for you in the pinch, I suppose. All right, now, we usually go into our next story, but we're going to go into a letter to the editor that we received because it got a lot of reaction this week. Now, the letter I'm referring to is one that was printed in last week's edition of the Banner Press. Ada was the person who sent it in for us. And I'm not going to delve into, we always try and keep things positive in the paper. We like to tell positive stories, but at the same time, you have to tell what you believe to be the truth, the something that can be proven, something that can be sort of backed up here. And with letters as well, we talked, Ken, about putting this letter in there. If you haven't seen it, again, go to the March 10th edition of the Banner Press or go on to mywestman.ca and get some of that. But we did discuss this, didn't we, Ken?
Yes, you and I discussed it, and I thought long and hard about this letter because it is there's a lot of very serious situations described there in terms of the care that Ada at Country Meadows in Neepawa feels that she has been getting. And I've known this person for 50 years. And I don't think that she would stretch the truth. She talks about, and it was dictated to a friend, but receiving something less than what she felt was adequate care for a 99-year-old woman who is pretty much immobile. And so I thought about it, and I thought, well, if we ignore the letter, what's that serving? That's certainly not getting the story out there. If the story isn't all true, what do we do? And then I realized, well, that's
Well, I'm going to cut you off here again. Not the term story. No. It's not a story.
Right,
It's a
sorry,
letter.
yes.
In this business, you have to be very specific. A letter can be an opinion piece, just like Ken Waddell's columns, just like any column we do that's an op-ed. It's an opinion piece. We're not passing this off as news per se. And this letter as well is an opinion piece. So
Yes,
no,
yeah.
I sorry to cut you off like
No,
that,
no,
Ken,
you're,
but I just
you're,
want
Owen, you're absolutely right. There's definitely a demarcation between a story and a letter to the editor or a column. And so I thought if there's some things wrong in there, it's not serving much of a purpose if they don't put it out there. And so I went and talked to 3 different families who have intimate knowledge of the situation in this particular care home. My wife and I have fairly intimate knowledge of another care home because her sister was in one for 4 years and just recently passed away. And I said, no, there's enough here to raise some questions. And so in accompaniment with the letter to the editor, I also wrote a column about care homes in general. And this week in the paper, we got 2 letters to the editor, and they're both pretty supportive, questioning, and I think it's good that the whole process is being questioned. As I said in my column, a lot of really tremendous care being given in the care homes. But it's the gaps that we're worried about, or that I'm worried about, and a lot of people are worried about. There's things being missed, a diagnosis being missed, timely care being missed.
Yep.
And I know they'll talk about being short of staff, and there's 9 beds closed. I think there's more than that. Staffing. Somebody, somewhere, has to grasp that problem by the horns and turn it around. And if they've got to get more staff, then they've got to get more staff. If they've got to have better training or better checking, so be it.
And again, I'll use personal experiences and examples to sort of back this up. This week, we had people who were out sick. Today, we have people who are out ill and have some sort of, one person sort of slipped on the ice there, hurt themselves. So we're working a skeleton crew. So I can understand working under tight circumstances, working a skeleton crew like that. The difference being, I only had to do it for a day and a half. It's not the rule. It's the exception. And we don't want to sort of paint a spotlight on those hardworking individuals who are doing the best they can in these types of facilities. At least I'll say that, I don't speak personally for the Banner Press. I don't speak for NACTV. This is my personal opinion on this. And I say it's difficult in a small town to sort of sometimes write these stories and to talk about these discussions that paint people in your community maybe in a negative light. It's tough from time to time, and we don't like doing that, but you gotta cut through that, and you've got to tell the truth of what the story is and what the narrative is.
Yeah, you need to face the truth, and if the truth reveals something that needs to be celebrated, so be it. If the truth reveals something that needs to be changed, so be it. It's that simple.
The interesting thing as well is we have received reaction for next week's edition of the Banner Press. I believe another letter or a thumbs up. I forget which off the top of my head. If it was a thumbs up, it was an extended thumbs up. We might have to use it as a letter. So we're going to see even more discussion on this in next week's edition. And it's interesting. We brought this up because of the personal care homes. It's been a very, very tense issue for a lot of people for a long period of time, not just in Neepawa, but across Manitoba and the nation, really. Because the same issues you hear about in a local one or in other communities, we're hearing all over the nation.
And as I pointed out in my column too, Neepawa by 1976 had 120 beds in their care home. Now we have 100, and at least 9 are closed, and some say there's as many as 20 closed. So it's somewhere between 80 and 90 beds, where we used to have 120.
Yep.
But in 1976, the population in Neepawa was 3,000 people. Now it's 6,000 people.
And that feels like it maybe even you're being a little. We should be a little more generous with that number. Almost, I'd say.
Well, we'll see what the next census said, but I don't think the census always seems to be behind. And a couple of years ago, the census said we were at 5,800 people, and a lot of people felt that was low, and I agree. It's certainly up past 6,000 now, I'm pretty sure. And obviously not all of those people are elderly, but there's a pile of them that are. And
We're all getting there, though, one day at a time.
yeah, that's right. And if there's, like I said before, if there's something that should be celebrated, it should be celebrated. If there's something that needs to be changed, it needs to be changed.
If you have an opinion that you'd like to share on this, we always appreciate it. You can send your letters to news@neepawabanner.com. Again, as long as you keep the cursing to a minimum,
Yeah.
we always appreciate your opinions, whether we agree with them, whether we disagree with them. That's what this is about, is having that interaction and having that open discussion. So we've started it. Ada started it. Let's see where it plays out from here. All right, let's get into the news portion of this. Neepawa Town Council, they had their first meeting in March. I wasn't there at the time because I had a basketball game I had to cover, which we're going to be talking about a little bit later on in the show. But I was able to watch it because NACTV is always there recording it. Always appreciate that. And some very interesting things came out of the most recent council meeting. One of which we covered previously in the edition of the Banner and Press, the crosswalk over at Mountain and Hospital. It's been a concern for a couple years since it was put in 2019. It turns into a bit of a logjam at the start of the school day and at the end of the school day. And a lot of people have been saying it's an accident, it's a tragedy waiting to happen. So fortunately, the town of Neepawa, along with the school division, and most importantly, Department of Highways, the province of Manitoba, have figured it out and are moving forward with changing the crosswalk from being at that intersection on the south portion to the northern portion. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar, the reason Highways had to get involved with it is because that road is a former highway. And because of bureaucracy and government, even though it hasn't been a former highway for how long, Ken?
Well, I would say early 70s, late 60s.
Late 60s, early 70s. Because it was then, we still got to go with hat in hand and ask the government for permission to do something that we should be able to do like that in a snap. Frustrating. Extremely frustrating. It's frustrating for me, Ken. I've only been here about 9 years. As a resident of Neepawa for almost as long as we've had that street, you got to be just even more so.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was as soon as you saw it unfolding, the stupidity showed up right away because the school buses pull out, heading west on Hospital. They turn south on Mountain. I don't think any of them turn north. They turn south on Mountain, cut through the crosswalk, and there's hundreds of children crossing there.
Yep.
And if they put the crosswalk, which they're going to do on the north side, the kids are on the crosswalk away from the buses instead of the buses going through them.
For 15 to 20 minutes every school day, it turns into a parking lot over there. If I lived in the northern portion of town and I had to get home for some reason and just be stuck in that, it'd be so frustrating. I lived in Winnipeg for a time, and I was lucky enough to always avoid the traffic hour there, but I know people who wouldn't be able to, and they would just be in a rage by the time they got home. And it's like, I thought I moved to Neepawa to avoid that type of road rage.
Yeah. No, Mountain Avenue has become extremely busy because of the increased doubling the population and because of the large numbers at the two schools at the north end down. The hospital is there, the arena is beyond that, and also the daycare. So the amount of traffic in that area is gone up exponentially. And this is a good move. I hope they get it done before there's an accident.
That's right. If you want to find out a little bit more on the details on the timeline and some of the history behind it, you can find that story. It's on page 2 of this week's edition of the Banner and Press, along with my general council story. Just a lot of little bullet points of some of the things that went on, and updates on a lacrosse league that is looking to be established in Neepawa at the Yellowhead, as well as the ice bikes. We talked about those last year. They finally got their sort of insurance in place so they can be used by the general public. Land approval, potentially. This could be a big story moving ahead. A land approval on some property just north of the former Chicken Delight, just right at the corner of the highway. that means there could be something happening there. We can't say with
Don't tease us. Come on. What is it, Owen?
we can't
What
say
is-
with 100% certainty just yet, but when we can officially, we're going to be right in there, right talking about it. I assure you of that.
He hasn't even told me.
Well, nobody's told me. I'm just
Oh.
sort of people are talking, people are saying things,
Whatever.
But this is what I can say officially as well. Another separate story from council was the RCMP had a sort of session where they talked about some of the things that are going on with Spruce Plains RCMP. One of them is the purchasing on a national level of body cameras for the RCMP officers. Something that is going to be moving ahead right here in Neepawa as well. That'll be interesting. We'll see how that plays out, Ken, I think. What's your take?
Well, I think that the body cams have become kind of an accepted thing, and most of the police services agree that it's there because it protects them against or helps protect them against false accusation, and gives them an idea of what's actually happened in a particular event. Hopefully, we'll never have to use them in this area in terms of uncovering or dissecting something tragic, but you can do that with the camera. So, but the price, my God, how much were you saying it's going to be?
Well, according to Staff Sergeant Colby Argue, who did the presentation, right now those cameras are expected to cost around $3,000 per camera, and that's for the technology and that's for the upkeep during the year. This was mandated by the federal government, mind you. You'd think, Ken, if the federal government is mandating you have to do something, the federal government would step up and help with that to a higher degree. But of that 3,000, 7,000 is going to be covered locally, or 70%, I'm sorry, is going to be covered locally, and 30% of it is going to be covered by Ottawa.
That sounds similar to the old argument of Medicare. Like at one time, Medicare was 50% province, 50% federal, and now that's gotten out of proportion. So, and the other thing too is that as I mentioned to you, we were talking about this the other day, is that under a certain population level, and I can't exactly name what it is, municipalities, rural municipalities, don't pay anything for policing. Mm-hmm. It's provided by the federal government, and whereas in Neepawa, the town of Neepawa pays for a high percentage of the policing already.
Yep.
Plus now there's cost of cameras.
Well, it's one of those things of, if it were flipped, I probably personally wouldn't have that much of an issue. If the federal government was looking over 70% of the cost and we had to look after 30%, that's a little more feasible to me. But hey, I'm not a politician, so
You should be.
Oh, jeez. If anyone's watched this show for any extended period of time, they know I couldn't because I'm too honest about my opinions.
Thanks a lot. I used to be a politician.
Well, that's why you're being honest about your opinions on the show now there, Ken.
Yeah. Anyway, tell us about the Rotary. They're going to sell some books.
Rotary Club, yeah, definitely. This story came in a little bit late. I didn't even know whether I was going to be able to have time to get it into this week's edition of the paper. Fortunately, I made time. I found the time. They're doing their annual book sale. It's been sort of on the kibosh for a few years. They did a stripped-down version of it last year, but they're going to be bringing it back again. So this is just sort of letting you people know, if you have any books you don't use anymore, you don't read anymore, or anything like that, there's going to be some donation places in and around Neepawa where you can drop off the books. And that'd be greatly appreciated. They're looking to get around 8,000 books for this event, which is going to be happening in May. I'm not going to give away all the details right now, first off, because I want you to pick up the paper. And I also want Rotary to buy an advertisement or two. I'll be honest with you on that. So, but we will, either way, we are going to be talking about this very much as we get a little bit closer to May and the book sale. It's great that they're able to do this. It's great that they've been able to, in such a short period of time, can turn it into something that everyone in the community looks forward to.
Yeah, no, it's tremendous the amount of books that they have, and I think my wife has informed me that there's a few boxes leaving my house with this goal in mind, so that's good. It raises money for Rotary, and they do tremendous work both here locally and across the continent and even around the world. So worldwide, the polio vaccine thing has been a big initiative of Rotary, and I don't think anybody can really argue with that one. So.
No. All right, let's get into a little bit more lighthearted here. We're going to go into the sports section, and there's so much sports. If you watched last week's show, you know there was a lot of basketball that we talked about, and this week, honestly, is no different. We touched on it a little bit. The Neepawa Ballers Basketball League put together an all-star group of players from that league, and they went to a tournament in Brandon a couple weeks ago, and they had a wonderful time, and I'm very pleased that I was able to get it into this week's paper. I didn't have the time last week to get the story done, but I was able to get it done this week. Rafael Flores shared some great details with me about it and about the camaraderie of the league and about how proud they were to be able to represent Neepawa in another community. When it comes to this is the Neepawa Ballers Filipino Basketball League, although there are non-Filipinos that play in the league. But it's everyone together. They love basketball, and they love to represent their communities. Back home, they have leagues like this all over, almost all the islands. And they represent their region and their community. And they feel that sense of pride as well, representing Neepawa here. And Rafael really expressed that in the story, and it was really nice to see. As an immigrant myself, my family came here when I was only just under a year old, so I feel that same sense that community feels about the appreciation for Canada and what it has given to my family and the communities such as Neepawa and what they've given to me. So this one matters to me. I take it to heart as well.
Well, Canada's grown a lot in 50 years. You've contributed pretty heavy to all this.
Yes. Yes, that's true there.
A lot of changes. Anyway.
No, but if you get that chance, that's a wonderful story. I hope you do take a moment. And on the back page as well, a little more basketball. Perfect season for the varsity boys basketball team over at NACI. They went through the regular season 10-0, went through the playoffs 2-0. Great. I was able to get a couple pictures and the story. Spoke with Coach Chi Small, who's also the football coach. And they won the championship. Congratulations to them. And you can find that story on page 24. Sorry, Ken, you were going to say something?
I always wonder what Mr. Small does in his spare time.
Well, he did. This is his spare time.
Okay.
He's so good at his spare time, He's able to do all this and teach, so, sleeping, maybe not.
Maybe not.
But he's a younger man, so sleep when you're my age.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
You're awful quiet in that corner of your office some days. I'll have to check up on you.
If the hardwood isn't your thing, we've got enough ice stories in this paper to keep you interested as well. The Tiger Hills Hockey League starting to come to a close. Minnedosa Bombers and Gladstone Lakers are playing in the Eastern Division semifinal. Minnedosa's on the cusp of winning. They're up 2-1. In the story, you'll see they were up 2-0. They played their third game just after our publication deadline. So Gladstone ended up winning that game, so they're going to be playing again this weekend in Minnedosa. If that's not your style of hockey, wonderful to be able to share with you that the Neepawa Tigers hockey team has advanced on to the championship final in the Westman High School Hockey League. Once again, we maybe have to do something about this deadline, Ken. I seem to be saying a lot more often than not, it happened just after our deadline ending. But this just happened after our deadline. The Tigers won the third and deciding game in their semifinal against Killarney, and they moved on to the championship of the Westman High School Hockey League, which is, again, going to be starting up this weekend.
Against Swan River?
Against Swan River, that's right. Swan River is the third-seeded team. They had a bit of an upset of their own, defeating Dauphin in the other bracket. So now it's going to be Neepawa and Swan River. And their team's named the Tigers as well, Ken. So it's going to be, no matter what happens, Tigers win. Tigers win, Tigers lose is going to be a headline there somewhere, I'm sure.
The fur will fly one way or another.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
All right. No, congratulations to them. Congratulations on their success this season. It seems like every week we're talking about them and spotlighting them. and rightfully so.
Well, didn't they win in pretty dramatic fashion? Weren't they down 2-1 with only a little bit of time left in the game?
That is right. You can find it in the story with about 3 minutes left in the third deciding game. Juri Kobacki is the young man who was able to score. He scored all 3 goals for them in that game. So obviously, congratulations to Juri and the entire team. They put up a great effort, and now they got a shot at a championship. That'd be wonderful to be able to sort of have that big picture on next week's front page of them holding up the trophy, hoisting the banner, the whole 9 yards. No pressure, though.
No
right?
pressure. No.
Win, lose, or draw, it's been a great season for you guys. Kudos. Yeah. All right, now, with a little bit of time left, I'm just going to share a little bit of information on a few stories we had submitted to us. Always appreciative of you sending in these types of stories. It definitely takes a little bit of the work off my shoulders. The U13 Female Titans won bronze in a tournament they participated in. It was the Rural Female Provincials that took place in Hamiota. So they are the 3rd best team in all of rural Manitoba. That is a big accomplishment. They were able to win the bronze there. Congratulations. I do appreciate the submission of the story. Anytime you're able to sort of share these types of stories, we love to be able to share them with you. Much appreciative of that little bit of extra there, Ken.
Yeah, and then we've got the Neepawa figure skating did some great things, and actually there's several other stories in the paper here, various sports teams who have done well at various levels, so lots to read there.
And Expressive Dance as well, with Crystal Scott sent some information on their Highland dancers. We got that on page 12 this week's edition. And right across from it, we've got on page 13 of this massive 24-page paper, Pharmacy Awareness Week, our special feature, right, Ken?
Yeah, and it's we've got four pharmacies from the area featured there that were brought ads with us there. We got some articles on the pharmacy, and I just was prompted to say that, the pharmacies are so much more than they used to be. Through the pandemic, they were serving as vaccine clinics. You can go there and get a free blood pressure checkup if you think that your blood pressure is getting a little high. There's a whole bunch of other things that they're doing, and there's more stuff coming through enablement of provincial legislation that will allow the pharmacists, who are highly trained and care very deeply, to do things for patients, if you wish, customers, that might take some pressure off the doctors. And we know that's the situation, certainly in this community and many others, that the doctors are overworked. I know, talking to one of the doctors, he said, I can't possibly keep up with the work at the clinic that's in front of them. And of course, here in Neepawa, they're spending more and more time in the ER. Yep. Because the surrounding community ERs are not able to be open. A couple of them haven't been open for a few years now, and some of them aren't being able to staff. So this ER here in Neepawa is always open so far, and the doctors are. One day I was up there, I had to get something done, and there was 3 doctors, 2 on ER and 1 seeing patients at the hospital, and so it was a busy place.
Most definitely. And again, don't take for granted the fact that we have 2 pharmacies here in Neepawa, Harris and Neepawa Pharmacy. Very appreciative of both of them. Don't take that for granted. That's not something that happens in each and every community. So always love to be able to put spotlights on organizations and businesses like that. So we're coming to the close of our weekly show. As usual, we appreciate your time. If you have a story idea or suggestion, you can call us at 476-3401, or you can contact us via email at news@neepawabanner.com. Anything at all, we all appreciate it. Unless you're mad at us for some reason, then, you can still call us, but we're not going to be as pleased to sort of talk to you about that then.
We will, though.
We will.
We will.
Eventually, if I'm not too busy. But once again, Ken, appreciate you sitting in, as always. Always great to have you here.
Well, it's good to be here, and I appreciate the work you and Cassandra's normally with you on this, and it's an extra job that we ask you to do that's not really part and parcel of the newspaper, but we like to spread the word about the newspaper, and we're thankful to NACTV to do that.
That's right. Thank you, and have a good week.